Okay, again, this is part two of some minor things wrong with Amazon. Well, depending on your perspective. I'm really big on Amazon. I think, because they pay benefits right out of the gate, that just puts them miles ahead. And they're good benefits. The benefits that they provide, the health benefits, the dental, the medical, are just as good and just as inexpensive as what I had when I was a civil servant. But they do have some issues. It's not a major issue. Like I said in part one, 95% of the frontline managers at Amazon and the next level up are what I call good people. They're there to do their jobs. They push, they motivate people, but they do it in a positive way. Not everybody makes the grade. Some people, you know, don't last more than 6 weeks. Some people say after 2 weeks I give up, but there has to, you have to give them some boundaries as to what's good and what's bad. One of the negative things about them is that sometimes frontline managers put their own self-interest above corporate policy. If you anywhere you walk in Amazon, you see the fundamental tenements, the mission statement of Amazon, and one of those is customer excellence. And that drives me. That was motivation for a couple of things that I did. Not to mention the stock incentive that they had. That really kept me going. Well, plus I had a child support obligation I had to meet, but um, which I felt it was my responsibility. They were my kids. I needed to take care of them as best as I could. But that stock incentive really, really, um, you know, got me thinking, to take ownership of what I do and stuff. Yeah, you got to do what your supervisors say. I mean, when I was a civil servant, I was an engineer, so I provided engineering expertise. Supervisor couldn't order me to say that Ohm's law was invalid. They couldn't order me to do stuff that I thought was unethical. I mean, they try sometimes, but getting back to the point, here the issue with frontline managers is production, and it's understandable. Amazon sells millions, if not billions, of items a year, and thus production is of prime importance. You gotta get the stuff put into inventory. But sometimes they come along and it's like just shove stuff in there, shove stuff in there. And you're doing that. After a while, once you get the methodology down, you get accustomed to the physical. Now it's sort of like, you've gone from just striving to get the mechanical motions to get the stuff in to, doing it right to, you actually get to a point where now you've grown out of that initial thing. You've adapted to the physical rigor, and your mind. Yeah, most of the time it's dull. You're repeating the same thing over and over, but you become more aware, more conscious, and you start to see things you didn't see. It's like when you look at a painting, the first time you look at it, you notice certain things. By the 10th time you go back and look at it, you've seen all the little details, right? So, one of the things I noticed during one of our crunch periods, a guy came, and I was thinking about it, and this guy just happened to walk by. He had been working there a few years, and he did essentially the same job I did. He said basically, I was thinking about ordering a pair of glasses, but I bet they're going to be broken when I get them. And I was sitting there I was already starting to evolve or develop an idea about that because usually we just slide stuff over, put another one in. And other people are really striving, they got to put food on the table. So and I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm thinking, he's right. Look at the way this stuff is being put in there. We slide it over, put something in, and move on. And I started thinking about it, and I realized, well, it only takes an extra half second to kind of straighten it up. That way, things are less likely to get broken. It slides over and creates a lot more space. That just, some of that evolved. Some of it was the initial thought of, I don't want to put something in there because I don't want something to get broken. Um, and what I started realizing, is, and this kind of goes against some managers because you know, if you take 10 seconds to straighten up and stow an item, I mean, they look at that pretty negatively. But what the effect was, is I created a much neater stack in, actually it was more like 6 or 7 seconds, but just for the emphasis on the time it took. But now I got all this open space, and I could take one, two, I could get, twice, three times into that bin what I would have put in, and um, what that does is it takes the average amount of time for all the items I put in that bin to actually be rather substantially lower than if I only put two items here and then found an item there and found an overall. So I was actually getting up to 59 years old, 58 years old. I was getting up to 70% in the upper in the top 30% of stowing rate, any given week. Sometimes it fell down to 60. It was always above. One time it fell to 45. I was in the top 55. Typically over 50, typically 60 to 70, and um, and so you can expand that instead of just thinking of it on a bin basis. You think about it over the overall pod phase, because sometimes you take 6, 7 seconds to straighten that up. Okay, you misjudged it. You're not going to fit a lot of stuff in there. But the average for all of the bins on a face was going considerably down. And the more you can stow in any one pod face, your overall time tends to go down, um, because you don't have that gap where you're waiting for the next um, robot delivered bin, pod face to come by. Pods, faces, bins. And they really took exception to it, but they might have sort of bought into it because I got selected to be in the Amazon Training Center, which means when new associates come in, um, I would be help training them. And so I would always emphasize this, working methodically and considering more of the average time per stow rather than one outlier stow being above normal. But ladder management didn't really like that. Um, it's like, if you're not pounding nails, you take a. If you're not pounding nails, you're not doing your job. But my rate um, got me above where I never got a notice after, after the first summer I was struggling, but after that, um, uh, one of the managers introduced, instead of bending down or squatting, to actually lunge to put things in, and that actually worked well for me, and I never had a problem with my rate once I started adopting that. Um, so um, customer service isn't always at the top of their list. And the other thing is sometimes manufacturers don't provide things that are well suited for Amazon. The packaging is such that stuff falls out. And I had this same manager that was throwing punches at me says, well, out of four of them, five, anyway. Um, I'm saying, hey, look, we need to put this in a bag because the stuff is going to fall out. And the point is, it's customer service. The customer gets it. He doesn't care if it's Amazon's fault or the manufacturer's fault. He only cares, hey, what the hell did you send me? So usually what we did was when we had stuff like that, we put it in bags. And we just did it, And I brought it up to the manager, and he's saying, well, we're trying to get them to provide better packaging, but it's not our fault, our issue, if that's the way they want to sell them. I mean, I'm not going to argue with this guy. I don't need to get rid up and have another punch thrown at me. But so that's kind of one of their weaknesses, is they're supposed to recognize and develop talent. I think the organization did. You always saw smart people that worked hard, move up into certain areas, and that innovation I did, whether it was recognized or not. I have to at least say, well, I did get the training and I was able to pass on those skills to other people. So, you know, um, maybe as a corporation, they do follow that principle, even if frontline managers don't always adhere to those basic tenets. So that's my rambling. The other thing wrong with Amazon, um, but overall, I still give high marks to Amazon. They led the way to 15 bucks an hour. It's not a lot of money. Um, yeah, you can survive on it, but I'd like to see it get to 20, 25 bucks an hour. Just so I can afford to buy a lot more stuff from Amazon. Anyway, okay, that's my rambling. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you if you have any feedback, let me know.